My people of this country and we're under attack. They banning us, they cancel us for speaking the facts. If you man enough, come stand with us, take USA back. And every time we pull up, all you're gonna see is American flags. American flags. American flags.
Are we on? Oh, there we are. Jesus. These lights make me look old, fat, and balding. Right, we know we're on.
Well, we know we're on.
Hey,
Terry's fat and balding.
testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello. Didn't even drink tonight. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Behind Enemy Lines, deep in the bunker somewhere in the communist state of BJ Prickster, Illinois.
Yeah.
So we have a really cool, interesting show tonight, especially for those of you like me who've been banned and blocked on Facebook numerous times. So we're really, really excited. Yep, there you go. We have Ryan
Can
Hartwig.
talk to the author.
And Ryan's out of Phoenix, and he used to work for Cognizant consulting firm, and they were the third-party independent
Content moderators. They do other stuff,
Yeah.
but they signed an exclusive contract with Facebook to do content moderation. It was like
Isn't that what I was just about to say?
it was like a farm. It was like a farm of a bunch of people that were just going through Facebook posts and saying delete, just random people getting paid what, $15 an hour to be like, your political views are that you're a Nazi, so we're going to delete what you have to say. That's essentially what they were saying.
So what they were, that was so Ryan,
Among other things.
Ryan was the Project Veritas whistleblower, and he someone's whistling over there.
R2D2's in the background.
So Ryan
He's mad about this.
came out to Project Veritas, and probably a lot of folks saw when he spoke up about that. He also wrote a book, Behind the Mask of Facebook. Oh, that's Ryan calling me right now.
Right
Hey
there.
Ryan, I hope you're. I'm talking about you right
You're
now.
live.
Yeah, you got the email and you got it in the text, buddy. You got a
in a
text with it
text.
too. I sent both. You got an email and a text.
So
You could-
I know
well,
the
you could-
suspense is
I
killing
sent-
everybody.
So you sent,
As
hey, everyone.
Terry said.
So I sent you, you should have an email, and then as a backup,
This
I
is,
sent a text. So if you could go to the text and just send it to your email, and then jump on your phone, send it to your laptop in case you didn't
Technical
get the email.
difficulties, everybody.
Sound good? All right.
We hope that Cognizant is not monitoring this episode.
Yeah, you gotta remember, this is not like a professional podcast. So anyway, that was Ryan. He's in Phoenix.
One day we won't have to call our guest via cell phone on the actual episode.
Ryan has a young baby, and he was babysitting to the last minute and jumping on. So
Babies, it's called being a father. You,
I know
you goon.
you sound like a liberal woman saying that. So Ryan was a content moderator. He wrote the book Behind the Mask of Facebook. And then for any of those people that either saw or planning to see Police State, Dinesh D'Souza's new documentary, Dan Bongino's in it. Ryan's also featured in the same documentary. So he has tomorrow. He's going out to Vegas to be with Bongino and Dinesh D'Souza, and I'm so upset because he invited me to be his. He's got a guest, and his wife couldn't make it. So he invited me, but I'm going to be at the Don Jr. thing, and would have loved to go to Vegas. So I'm kind of bummed about that. So anyway, he's going to be on the show. We also had a little update that we did, a little extra update with one of Trump's co-defendants, and Pastor Lee, who was on a few weeks ago, and his attorney David Shishkokis. And David is giving
Easy
us,
for you to say.
Yeah, he's giving us an update on Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis. Why did they plead guilty? What?
Because
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So,
all right.
So let me finish. So why did they plead guilty, and what does it mean to Pastor Lee and Donald Trump and the others? So he's going to give us a little 10-minute update that we pre-recorded. It's going to be on the back end of this. So Ryan's here right now, right? Oh, he's not in. So you were teasing me. So oh, there he is.
There we go.
Hey, there's my buddy.
How's it going, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
Good. Obviously, you know Terry. I'm Paul Drabick. I'm Terry's co-host. Thanks for
Paul,
coming
nice to
out with
meet
us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
We've experienced some censoring ourselves lately on Facebook, right, Terry? And we're getting it from our own Republican Party in the at our local organization as well. So seems to be a bit of a trend throughout the nation right now is this censorship kick, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, I mean, we know the Uniparty is live and active and fighting against American citizens. So, if you're who's that guy in that congressman in South North Carolina that just got ousted by Kevin McCarthy because he spoke out about Kevin McCarthy being a swinger, being at sex parties.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Who's that congressman? Young guy.
Oh, Madison Cawthorn, yeah.
Yeah, Madison Cawthorn. So you speak out against, say the truth about, okay, this guy's at sex parties.
Right.
And then guess whose money goes to get you out of campaign?
Well, maybe I don't. Maybe I do like Kevin McCarthy. Just a joke. I'm just joking. I'm just
careful. This guy's Mormon. That's not his specialty.
So this segment is about you and your story, right? So we're very excited. So Paul, I got 3 simple questions.
Sure.
He read your book. I got ADD.
Yeah,
so you know what I do? So I buy the book and he reads the book, right? Serious. So he read the book. I heard the stories. I looked on YouTube and stuff, but so I got 3 simple questions and intro questions, right?
Okay.
Explain, a little bit about your background and stuff, but I did a brief introduction. Why don't you just, for the audience, introduce yourself. When you were working at Facebook, right? You were a content moderator, hired through Cognizant Consulting. Cognizant, remember that bad name. And you know why I'm saying that, right, Ryan? Cognizant. Right.
I'm cognizant that you're stating cognizant.
Competition.
Okay, we're saying cognizant too much.
They're your competition. Right? Yeah.
But don't say it what that is. So anyway, could you explain to the folks, if you want, a little background on yourself, but explain what exactly is a content moderator, right? Yeah. And then Facebook hired Cognizant to be all of us see it, right, as a third party independent, right? You are independent, right? And explain what what independent means. And then I got one question after you answer that, and then you could have the So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So my background is I'm not a software engineer. People think Facebook are like, oh, you're some like a software engineer now. Like I was like entry level, the most entry level, like making $15 an hour starting in 2018, working as a contractor for Facebook. So my employer was Cognizant, a full-time employee.
What was the name of the company? What was the company's name again? Say it again.
Company's name was Cognizant.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Yeah.
Just
COG, N for Nancy, IZ for zebra, ANT.
Yes. So go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, buddy.
So I was hired to be censor content for Facebook. So I was a content moderator. So they told us up front in the job interview, like, hey, you're going to see some really graphic stuff. You're going to see child pornography. You're going to see beheadings, torture, cartel violence. They're like, are you okay with that? I'm like, okay. Like I needed a job. So, yeah. So I started there.
Sorry. The way you said that. Yeah. Beheadings. I needed a job.
Yeah. You're going to be traumatized for the rest of your life. Scarred.
Yeah. I needed a job. For $15 an hour, right?
Yeah. $15 an hour. So I get hired and I start, so basically it's one screen at a time, one image at a time. You get something that pops up on your screen. The image was reported by Terry Newsom. This is child. And then you have to decide what it is. Okay, is this child pornography? Is this violence? Is this bullying? Is this someone like just talking shit to someone else about someone else? And though it's really specific. So I felt like a kind of a paralegal for memes, a meme paralegal.
Yeah, that's good. That's
So
pretty good.
literally, it's like we had to like identify. We had to help train the AI to identify like what is cleavage, what is bulge. So like it was so specific. Like we're like, hey, is this bulge? Is it erect or is it downward, upward? Like
Can I ask you something about that real quick? When you say train, does that have any relation to the algorithms that are set? Is when you're training the AI to catch something, does that have anything to do with the algorithms, or because you talked in your book about training the algorithms too, to look for certain things? What
we were doing was called continuous enforcement. So we would, in addition to seeing if it violates or not, we would see if the image had, a woman in a bikini, or for example, we'd mark it for that. And I think the idea was down the road so that users could choose to filter out that type of content. So basically for users, yeah. And so we would train, if there was nudity or cleavage or like a guy in underwear, in boxers, whatever. We were training the AI, essentially training the algorithm.
Interesting.
And did they put, when you first started, right? Hey, Ryan, we're going to put you on Facebook and stuff. Did you have training that was cognizant training on behalf of Facebook? And did you have any training before you started this work for Facebook?
No, like they hired us and then they trained us. So they hired us and then we had like 2 months of training. And my trainer was like, she was talking about how much she loves Obama, and Obama was her Patronus charm. So like you got to know, like the people that are the trainers, obviously they've got their stamp of approval from Facebook. And so one guy's, if you're homosexual or you're or if you're a flaming liberal, then you're probably going to get promoted, as a supervisor or a trainer.
Did you sense that you couldn't talk, like say you're a Republican, you said that you're in trouble? Did you feel that in that environment?
So it wasn't as bad as like, okay, it wasn't as bad as San Francisco. For what I heard of how bad San Francisco is, because we were in Phoenix. We had a pretty diverse workforce. I was hired as a bilingual content moderator, so I was one of the only white guys working with all the Latinos. So like, traditional Latinos, Hispanics in Phoenix are fairly conservative. I mean, most of their parents are hardline Catholics. So these are first generation Americans. So they're not. It wasn't as bad. I didn't feel like I had to self-censor. There was a pretty diverse workforce. But just, a few months in, I'm like, okay, this is the job. And then then all of a sudden we're monitoring election content in Mexico. And then Facebook's all is like, hey, it's okay to attack straight white males as filth, as long as, it's in the context of supporting pride. So just things like that started to pop up.
So that's a good, just to get into the bias part. That's a good segue. So you talked about a couple different situations. One was the whistleblower for the Ukraine call, Shiramella, which you mentioned. I can't remember was that Vindman, Alexander Vindman, eventually was said to be the whistleblower, or what did it end up being, that Shiramella guy? Because what you talked about was like you had to censor his name even though it was out in the media, which that's what I found interesting. Was like, okay, the name was exposed, but Facebook was telling you that any mention to this name had to be censored, even though everybody knew it was out there and that he was the supposed whistleblower. So do you want to just expound on that situation a little bit to show us what the bias was like there?
Right. So then this popped up, and I actually escalated it, and I raised it up, and then they made a decision on it to start censoring it. So I noticed this. It was trending. This mention of Sierra Morella was trending, and so I raised it up to my supervisor Sean, and he was like, and he got the initial feedback from Facebook. So it was Eric Sierra Morella. I think Vindman separately gave testimony about it. Okay, yeah. But it was Sierra Morella. And Sierra Morella was former, I think, NSA, CIA, but was former CIA. Yeah. But he wasn't currently a government official, didn't have this. So in the initial guidance from Facebook was, hey, this guy's law enforcement. to protect his identity, we can't mention his name at all.
Yeah, that was it. That's right. They said that he had to be protected because he was law enforcement, right?
And then they changed. Like 9 hours later, they changed the guidance. And so, I mean, if you think about it, okay, like if you had think about, okay, if you had a Republican whistleblower who basically caused Biden to be impeached, oh my God, like, I mean, the media would be all over him. He wouldn't be able to live in peace.
Yeah.
So that, could you give a little context, the background there a little bit, so everybody knows them? The reason that I bring this up was because that whistleblower was the impetus for Trump being impeached. So if you could kind of just go through the timeline of events and then how they were like directing you guys what to do there.
Yeah. So basically, it's just good kind of background. So Ciaramella, let me pull up here. He was so he heard like the phone call that Trump had with Zelensky from Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
Like he was like third hand account. Like he heard someone, and the U.S. government had just changed the whistleblowing guidelines, where now they accepted like third hand accounts, because before it had to be a first hand account.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so,
which makes sense.
So they obviously changed that so they could try to get Trump in trouble. So the phone call, the little phone call is basically like Trump saying, "Congratulations on the victory. We all watched the United States, and you did a terrific job. The way you came from behind it, somebody who wasn't given much of a chance, and you ended up winning easily. This is to Zelensky, who just won the presidency in Ukraine." And then Trump was like, I have the transcript in my book, but it was nothing burger. Like the transcript has been released, and they made a big deal about it. So there was two leaders talking to each other. It was a 27-minute phone call. And then, so this was November 6th, 2019. And my coworker, Jaden, he was getting a lot of jobs about that. And so he raised it up, and then we got the initial guidance from Sean. And we thought it was like Alexander Soros. So he looks very similar to Alexander Soros, George Soros' son. And a lot of people erroneously were posting a photo of Soros and saying, "Hey, this is Eric Ciaramella." And we even asked about that. I'm like, "Hey, this isn't Ciaramella, this is Soros." So they're like, still delete it. We still need to delete it because they think it's Ciaramella. So initially,
even if it was Soros, they were having you delete it. Like, even though there was no danger to Soros, they still would told you that you had to delete that.
Well, yeah, the poster thought it was Ciaramella, and so they didn't want people. But yeah, it doesn't make sense, because if you're posting a photo of
somebody different, then what's the danger?
If I'm posting a photo of Paul and I say this is Terry Newsom, he's a right-wing conspiracy theorist, Proud Boy, like, okay. And if I say Terry Newsom's name, like, okay, I'm saying Terry, but it's not Terry.
Yeah, right.
Paul's gonna be the one getting doxxed. So
yeah, that's weird.
So 7:52 p.m. that day, they're like, "Hey, delete it under coordinating harm." Delete it under Paul's privacy policy. So law enforcement. And then later that afternoon, 5 hours later, they said, actually, delete it under this coordinating harm policy, which is kind of generic. So coordinating harm is what we delete for like election fraud. It's just kind of like for hacking, anything for hacking, we delete under that. So they changed that policy within 5 hours, and it was just, there's really no rationale for it. And I talked to my coworkers about it. I have my coworkers on video talking about the rationale for that.
Yeah.
And they said, my coworker Alfredo, that's a pseudonym, he's like, yeah, because I believe he was part of the CIA, so I think they're just throwing CIA under the same thing as undercover, along those same lines, because if people are like in the CIA, you don't really know. That's like basically the rationale.
Interesting.
Oh, he was kind of CIA. Yeah, we're protecting him. Yeah.
So because I wanted to get an idea of how quickly that situation moves from your side, but some of the bias stuff that you talked about, what they did with Greta Thunberg, and can you talk about how they made you moderate content regarding Thunberg, and then in other cases like the Nicholas Sandmann situation, the Covenant Catholic people, you had mentioned that they didn't protect him necessarily. So can you kind of give us the background of that and tell us how they kind of directed you in that Thunberg situation, how it wasn't a balanced moderation.
Yeah. So, and it was the kind of the same thing with Cimarella, because they pull the classifiers in. They use these classifiers and they can pull all the jobs for that have a certain phrase like Cimarella or Greta Thunberg, and they can dump those into our queue. So we get batches of jobs that we have to review, like 20,000 at a time or whatever.
Wow.
And so Facebook can kind of pick and choose which ones we review. So they can already, before we even gets to us, they can choose selectively enforce what they're going to moderate. So Greta Thunberg, this was in the context was this is a classic image. I should probably put this on a frame on my wall where Greta Thunberg is glaring at Trump at the United Nations.
Yeah.
She gets pushed to the side.
That's funny.
And so that was the context. So people were going after Greta online, right-wing people were attacking her. And she's a public figure.
Some good memes out there on that one. Yeah,
I love those memes. So the interesting thing. So another is the policy they have for public figures. So Facebook. So if you're a minor public figure, it's different than being an adult. So if you're a minor public figure like JoJo Siwa, I don't know if you know who JoJo Siwa is. She has a horrible hairline. She's now like lesbian, but she was like a kid actor, like a kid dancer, like Dancing with Moms or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So JoJo Siwa, she's a minor, so we can't talk like if you're an adult public, if you're Jimmy Fallon, if you're I don't know who's a public figure, Mike Tyson, people can attack you, can bully you in different ways. So I can call him a jerk, an asshole. I can call him lots of names because he's in the public sphere,
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a minor, I can't attack you with a claim of sexual exploitation. So I can't say, this Dancing with the Mom's 12-year-old, she slept with her boyfriend. Yeah. I can't, even though they're public, I can't do that. So Facebook said, hey, you can't call Greta Thunberg retarded. GRE. Can you say that for me, Terry? Can you say that for me? Retarded. Retarded.
Yeah.
That's pretty retarded, Terry. I didn't like how you said that name. Retarded. That's pretty offensive.
I mean, that's clever though. It's kind of like they don't want us to have any fun.
Yeah.
So I like that meme.
So how about this? Can you, off the top of your head, tell us what some of the top couple weirdest, nastiest, or craziest things you saw?
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, how many nightmares do you want to have tonight?
Well, I know you.
So
the
one that bothered me. I'll give you a couple. Oh, not too many. The one that bothered me quite a bit was it's called crushing. Please don't Google this. So crushing is where you have kids or adults stepping and killing puppies by wearing heels.
Really?
Yeah. And then people get off on that sexually by watching those videos.
You're kidding me. Do they do you guys report that stuff to the police? Or
we didn't. I mean, the only thing we really reported to the police is like suicides in progress.
A Republican. Who cares about the puppies?
Yeah. We only report Terry Newsom to the police. Yeah. To the FBI Terry watch list.
That would be like this. I would be so upset.
Yeah. Well, there was like organizations, right? Because you mentioned organizations. So did you ever report like Republican organizations or like, like your book is full of other people mentioning like these are dangerous, fanatical right wing. Everything that was Republican in your book that the other people were describing as crazy, radical activists and all of this stuff. So did they ever, do you know of any situations where they made you report organizations that seem to be right wing?
Yeah, so most of the so we had a hate figure list. We had a literal list. We had to scroll down and find names and flags and so Tommy Robinson was on the list. So Tommy Robinson's a hate figure. So you can't. The thing is, you can't do PSR. You can't do praise, support, or represent of him at all. The only context where you can mention Tommy Robinson is if you're condemning him. So he's on the same list, literally the same list as like Adolf Hitler and Gavin McInnes too.
Oh wow!
I guess he's a really bad guy.
Yeah, that's good. So tell me, speaking of Gavin McInnes, so he was the founder of the Proud Boys, right? So you got the Proud Boys and you got Antifa. Is Antifa okay and Proud Boys off limits on Facebook?
Antifa is not on the list, and Antifa is, yeah, Antifa is not anyone. And there's specific guides we actually had from it back in 2019 that Antifa is not considered a hate org, even though it's funny. They're like, hey, there's 13 protests simultaneously happening across the nation, but just please remember that Antifa is not a hate organization.
Yeah, they got all kinds of pub, and then you would hear like Christopher Ray suggests like, well, they don't seem to be organized. They don't seem to be organized. It's just an idea. You know,
yeah.
So like they're not organized. They're firebombing the courthouse in Portland right now. I'd say that's pretty organized.
So this ties into another question with the Antifa and the Proud Boys thing. Tell us about. You mentioned this to me. I don't know, some last time we were together, something about Southern Poverty and Law Center and how that's reference material for you in your job.
Yeah, so there's Southern Poverty Law. So that we would they basically in our manual where we would moderate, they told us it says, you know, we derived these lists from Southern Poverty Law. I think it was I might be confusing it with some ADL. He's one of the two. I think it was SPLC, Southern Poverty.
Yeah, SPLC. Yep.
Yeah, so we basically, you know, they're not gonna. Of course, Facebook's not. They'd rather just, instead of doing their own research, they're gonna rely on research that other organizations have done. Which, by the way, you know, the SPLC, people have been coming to lists and been targeted by left wing or other activists. Like pro-lifers have been targeted and almost, I think there was a shooting at a pro-life clinic because someone was put on this list by the SPLC.
So
it's not just, I mean, these lists aren't just for fun. I mean, there's real violence that's stemming from being put on these lists. So I think it's funny how like Google and Facebook, like when we did a lawsuit against Google a couple of years ago with Zach Voorhees, we filed a lawsuit against them. We raised $120,000. Facebook or Google came back in their lawsuit and they're like, oh, your campaign is called Punch Google and it's going to cause, there's going to be violence against us, and then you have people being put on lists and being, you know, targeted and buildings getting shot up because people are on this list.
Yeah, I'm on the list, but no one's shot me yet. Please. Jason, you have the cover story of that weasel Antifa punk, Southern Poverty.
So I don't stand too close to him. We're out in public, you know, because he tends to push buttons. So what? All right. So I think the biggest thing here is, and you talk about this in your book, the dangers of what Facebook weaponizes individual people to do, and the power that they give individual people in terms of censoring and moderating content in the context of political activism or elections specifically. You talk about a person named Zhang who was, I guess, also a whistleblower, or at least just somebody who worked with you. And then you mentioned somebody named Tom Codrinson. I don't know if these are pseudonyms, but either way, like he says something like, just don't use hate speech, or you don't have First Amendment rights. You have Facebook speech rights. Like, yeah. Can you just give me a sense of what your idea is about how dangerous this can be for society? Because you have some random people that are affecting the outcome of elections in Central America, South America, and of course, as we know, here in the United States as well.
Right. So, so Sophie Zhang was another whistleblower. I didn't know her, but she was a data engineer for Facebook, and she basically blew the whistle on, hey, you know, there's a lot of bots, and a lot of, you know, countries in the South America are using these bots, and the dictators are using these bots to influence public opinion. So she kind of raised the alarm on that, and Facebook didn't really care. And so I mentioned her in my book, Behind the Mask of Facebook, which you can find on Amazon. That's what I mentioned there. Then one of my coworkers talked about how we don't have Facebook, you don't have free speech rights, you have Facebook speech rights.
Right.
And you know, the last 20 years have just been incredible as far as like the emergence of technology and the internet. And really, I mean, Facebook, you know, Zuckerberg himself has said that, Facebook is the public square. So, right. Okay, so if you're going to be online and have a virtual identity, which now is pretty much where we have kids nowadays, they hardly even talk to their friends anymore. So right. The public sphere is the internet. It is scary that Facebook, I mean, they went so far as to, you know, when Trump was giving a State of the Union, they were telling it in the moment. They're like, hey, Trump's giving a State of the Union speech. Please, flag any hate speech coming from that because we really need to crack down on hate speech.
Wow.
I mean, so much of what you wrote about was the fact that it was crystal clear that they were being biased in terms of censoring conservatives, and and then not only that, but stoking like violent rhetoric on the left with like pictures of Trump's throat getting slit and other stuff like that,
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a sense that I think people think like, oh, there's people on the right are radical. I'm like, I wouldn't say it's radical. Wouldn't you say that it's divisive to censor one side's speech and then allow somebody else? I would say that they're creating the tension and the conflict in the country, because if you're going to censor somebody's speech, it's going to piss them off, And is that what you saw there? I mean, was there a clear, because it seems like you had a lot of conversations with people that you worked with that agreed that there was definite bias.
I got to get a cough drop. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Would you say that there was?
Yeah, there was definitely the bias. So I mean, when you think about how much power they have to influence public opinion,
Right?
And from conversations with my coworkers, where I was like, I talked to my supervisor Sean Browder, and I was talking to him about how, hey, there's people who have opposing viewpoints. What does Facebook do that they kind of like? And he's basically like, yeah, they kind of put people together who have same viewpoints, because you don't on your feed, you want to be, I don't know, for whatever reason, decide to put people together with the same viewpoints. So you get like an echo chamber on both sides, the right and the left.
Yep.
But yeah, there's clear bias. I mean, and the crazy thing is, even after my book got released, and we've known this for years, but this is actual, more definitive proof. You had these stupid senators, just saying that, there is the Facebook is not censoring conservatives. That's just a Republican talking point. And I'm no, like 10,000 moderators times,
and
there's proof.
Right, there's proof. Yeah, I mean, also, like one of the things, because you had presented a few examples of like, one said like, you are white trash in quotes, no action. Not only did it, this only establishes a subset, not an attack. Like, who comes up with these intricate rules? The problem that I saw was like, okay, so there's some random people that are creating rules as they go about speech. They seem to be, disadvantaging a conservative political perspective. Like, are we seeing like, the corporate takeover here of our individual rights, and then they're hiding behind the idea that, we're a private company? Is that what you think they were trying to do, is like, this is a political move?
I can see it two different ways. So I can see, the powers that be, we know there's influence from the government with Facebook, and that's even more apparent with the Missouri versus Biden case, which is moving forward, which will be great. But, one theory is, look, you just got some people in San Francisco who are in a bubble. They literally think that they're saving the world by suppressing conservatives. They think the conservatives are Nazis. So that's one viewpoint. Okay, they're in a bubble, and they're saving the world from Nazis.
Yeah.
The other viewpoint is, and maybe it's a combination of both, the government itself is instructing them to do this. And we know the FBI told the Facebook to suppress the Hunter Biden story. So
Zuckerberg mentioned that on like, he just casually brushed past that on Rogan's podcast. He just admitted, the FBI told us, whatever. And he's like, can we talk about Meta again? I don't know.
Well, that's crazy. I watched the premiere of The Police State last night, Dinesh D'Souza film, which I was participated in. And what better weapon to suppress your political enemies?
Was that your old
Facebook.
boss up there?
Yeah, that was my old boss. Like, he looks familiar. I like the stash. Yeah.
He looks like our chairman for our daughter's growth committee.
Yeah. It's a popular look these days. It's a popular look. Kind of like how you were talking to somebody in your book, and you're mentioning, and she was like, Antifa's, I don't know, they don't represent all liberals. In fact, they're kind of like hypocritical. They're doing the opposite of what they say they are. I was like, yeah, thank you. But you were saying,
what better weapon? I mean, what better weapon if you're gonna target your political enemies and suppress them? I mean, man, I think Joseph Stalin would have, I think he'd come back from the grave just to like, hey, play around with Facebook. Wow, this is cool. I can
Right.
censor my political enemies, or like, Pinochet. You think of all
Right.
the dictators in history. What a great tool in a bad way to silence your political enemies. Like,
Jack
wow.
Novak.
Yeah, well, we joke about him being
Jack
Hitler.
Novak, our committeeman.
Yeah, he's
in charge of it.
So just we have in our local
Inside job.
Republican organization, we've tried to start like a grassroots movement, and we've had Republicans donating to
Jason,
Democrats
do you have that old picture?
in our area. In fact,
Jack Novak?
we've had Republicans donating. I don't know if you know of Kim Fox. She's the radical left. Soros prosecutor in Cook County, which is where Chicago is. And we had Republicans in our area donating to them, and then we had Republicans voting for bills that would take away our First Amendment rights. So Terry and I have spoken out against that, and we've basically been silenced. Don't criticize Republicans. We don't criticize Republicans. Well, hey, they're not Republicans.
Yeah, so let's get back to some of the let's get back to some of the cool stuff here. So what is so you told me one. I'd like to hear a couple more like crazy things that wait, hold on a second. My producer's talking to me. What?
Okay.
Pornography? Oh, he wants to know what's some of the crazy porn you've seen. Okay, I asked him, Jason. All right.
His email address is no, just kidding.
He's got it, Jason. Go ahead. Did you see any crazy porn?
What?
Let's see here. Let me.
Do you need his email address, Jason? He wants me to give you his email
so
address.
FBI, my IP address is, and I'm viewing right now on the files on my computer. So, you know what's really bad is when I have exams. So there's guidance from Facebook about how they allow child pornography. And so when I search my file folder here, I search. This is bad. Don't search this, kids at home. But I searched in my file folder porn. And in my images, right, from like when I filmed, I have like, child nudity. And so like, it's a good thing this is well documented that I'm.
Wait, not on your computer. You don't have like you're talking.
No.
I
don't have any of that. I don't have the actual imagery. I just have the guidance from Facebook words, nothing, no images.
Yeah. I wanted you to have an opportunity to clarify that.
Yeah.
So what does that guidance
trying to
say?
think. So, but separately from that, let's I'm trying to think one example of crazy. I'll go into that second. But we sat occasionally, like you'd get like spam of like the browsers or whatever on that we'd have to delete. And I remember one of my this is just kind of a funny story. One of my coworkers, so we were in training, and this like 20-year-old girl, I mean, like she's probably pretty like conservative growing up, probably Catholic. Like they showed us in the training, like it was like full nudity, like a male nudity, like full frontal. And like she was like, she couldn't even talk. She was like stuttering, like kind of interesting reaction she had. But we would see that, and you click through, you don't spend much time looking at this stuff. It's like you're supposed to action each job within like 30 seconds. Okay. So so if you get porn on your screen, you're looking at it a long time, you're like, probably someone will come by and notice, be like, hey, what's taking so long on this job? And then you'd be like, oh, I had to review every thumbnail on this video.
But I mean, you saw like, because you mentioned in your book that you guys had a psychiatrist on site, because I mean, you guys are seeing like child porn. You said cartel murders. You mentioned, I don't know if I want to mention this graphic thing, but they cut off a guy's member and had a dog licking it. Like that sounds pretty terrible. The things
it was pretty bad.
Was there peanut butter on
it? No, it's just no peanut butter. Yeah, right.
It was pretty bad. Yeah. So we had counselors on site. So I talk about it a lot with the mental health, and I think that's really important, a really important aspect of it. And I was on a radio station in Spain a couple of weeks ago, and a bunch of moderators in Spain, they all quit. Like over 400 people quit because they weren't getting the help they needed, like psychologically. So fortunately, where I was, like, we had a psychiatrist on who managed the program, and we had counselors on site like 24/7.
Really?
And you had the number you could call. Yeah. So like any time of day, I could just go over and like go talk to a counselor.
But there's such an imbalance. Like you talk about how like there'll be provocative pictures of children, but then
Yeah.
like somebody mentioned something conservative and deleted post. Like
It's just smorgasbord of things. And the crazy thing is to the bond you create with your coworkers, because it's really a unique situation where you're sitting next to someone and you're talking about the issue. So I'm like, I get a picture one moment, oh hey, this is a funny political meme they're joking about, just super innocuous. And then the next moment I get like a graphic cartel video, and then I'm talking to my coworker. I'm like, hey, I'm looking at this cartel video. Like, is there nudity in this video, or is there like a dismembered body? Because nudity is higher on our hierarchy. So if there's nudity, I need to delete it for nudity. But can I really actually see the individual innards of the blood of his arm, or can I actually see the do I see the penis? So having those conversations, or even just like conversations about sexuality, like, hey, is this a female bulge? Is that an erect penis or not? Like, it's kind of a weird work environment, kind of cool in a way, because you talk about things you normally wouldn't talk about.
Sounds like there's like a desensitization of of people, kind of like making them robots,
like a mortician.
Yeah, well, yeah,
you get that gallows humor quite a bit. I worked at a funeral home back in like 2011 or for like a few months, and I actually worked my way up with that company. I had a lot of people under me.
But hey, Jason, where's the
But I worked for a bunch of
here, producer. What's going on?
Yeah.
But I did work for a bunch of stiffs. Most of them were stiffs.
Hey, come on, keep them coming. We got hey, there we go. So okay,
Yeah.
before we, I want to mention 230 because Section 230 of the Communications and Decency Act. Like. So that act was created in the mid-90s. You talk about it in your book, in the sense that it offers immunity to all these social media companies and allows them to not be characterized as publishers, but they're like you kind of mentioned, they're public forums or whatever, and they're private companies. But the other part of that is like, okay, there's 5 billion people, across the world on all these platforms, and then they can just pick and choose what you get to say. So can you go into, you're obviously very familiar with Section 230. Can you go into it a little bit and kind of describe, what you think is fair and what we should do in that situation, and maybe elaborate on what it is and how it relates to the social media companies?
Yeah. So basically, Section 230 is from 1996, the Communications Decency Act, and the whole idea was we want to prevent the internet's new. We want to prevent these online forums that host these websites from getting sued out of oblivion, because I could go on an online forum and then post something crazy and ridiculous, and then the whole website would get taken down because someone that I'm not responsible for, I'm just hosting the website, someone else posted that comment. Right. So that was the whole goal, is like, hey, let's let businesses flourish and not get sued out of existence. Right. But what it's morphed into now with misinterpretations of the law, it's giving additional protections that they weren't intended to have. So think of it as like a sword and a shield. So the sword is like, okay, the government is giving the authority to Facebook to like slash comments. Like if it's detriment, if it's certain criteria for censoring speech, okay, they have that.
Oh, and the sword, right? In good faith.
In good faith.
Yeah.
But there's two sections. There's Section 230C and 230C1 and 230C2. And so it's been misapplied, where the one policy that doesn't have the good faith, mention of good faith, is the one being used to protect them. So potentially the sword, the shield, is the one that's giving all the protections, and they're not being. That's kind of the analogy. There's two sections of the policy. There's a sword and the shield, and only one of them is being used, and it's the one part of the policy, part of the law, that doesn't have the word good faith in it. So
yes, what's ironic now is they're using 230 to protect themselves from all this stuff that they're doing, while at the same time you got Google, Amazon, Facebook censoring whoever the heck they want. Yeah. But then they want to be protected themselves, so they're basically doing the self-censorship of us and being protected by the government to allow that to continue to happen.
Right. So
Jason Fick, I work closely with him, and he's been suing Facebook since 2018. So they took down his page and sold it to someone else. He had like 50 million followers because he wasn't paying enough in advertisement money. So his this is fascinating. So his case was against Facebook, went to the Supreme Court. They choose not to hear it. Just a month ago, they Jason Fick and his team did some legal maneuvering where they basically forced the U.S. government to join the case. So now it's pretty clear that, hey, this is a government agency. Facebook is essentially a government agency. Now, earlier this year, when we had the whole big Supreme Court case about pro-life, there was another case that was, I think, bigger than that, and it basically had to do with the EPA. So the government, basically, the Supreme Court said, hey, EPA, you can't be making the rules, the laws. Congress has to make the laws. So you can't just have some agency making up their own rules. And so that's basically what Facebook is doing. So every policy they have that I moderated, that Congress should have been making that law, not Facebook attorney wonks.
And also Southern Poverty Law Center is an extension of the government.
Oh,
the Democrats, same thing. They're out there teaching, well, Facebook, but they're teaching the Department of Justice agencies, Bureau of Land Management. They're identifying who is considered an extremist. So and this is what I learned when I was with the Center for Self-Governance down in D.C. So they're weaponizing Southern Poverty Law Center to label us as our politicians, parents organizations, and then they use our tax dollars to get paid. Southern Poverty Law Center is a consulting arm to say these are extremist organizations, while Antifa, BLM, and all the leftists are not. And then Facebook is like a bigger, broader extension of that.
Well, then the government has plausible deniability because they've contracted out, a consultant to.
And then Facebook does by saying you're a third party independent moderator. It's like, oh my God.
But you were getting all your direction from Facebook, weren't you?
We would get it said from Facebook, like it'd be like, they'd be like, hey guys, here's the presentation from Facebook that Facebook has given us the guidance. Like, it was everywhere in our documentation. So the government is laundering their censorship through these companies.
Yeah, right. That's a great way to put it. Laundering their censorship. Yeah. Well, and the point is, I hate that argument that they're. I hate that argument that they're saying, like, it's a private company. It's like, okay, but if you have that many people on your platform and you're censoring them and you're going against their First Amendment rights, like, I mean, when does the government step in? I mean, obviously they have already stepped in because they've clearly been we're working with Twitter and we're working with Facebook to suppress information. But it's like, who's going to protect the people's right to free speech if Facebook is, censoring them and then the government is working with them? We got a bit of a, corporate government collusion problem here. And so I think Trump's message was always like, Section 230 then needs to be amended. It needs to be, amended to protect citizens' rights to free speech. I mean, I don't know. What is your opinion of what should happen to platforms like Facebook? And obviously Twitter's a little more friendly to free speech since Elon, but like, what's your opinion of should we use Section 230? Should they be broken up? What do you think, since you have direct experience?
Yeah, so that's the thing, is if they rewrite the law now, like if they get a new law, it's going to be too influenced by the lobbyists, by Facebook lobbyists. And so I think they should just interpret the law correctly. And so that's what Jason Fick, hopefully with this case, hopefully can do. And I think the Missouri first Biden case can help. And there's a First Amendment argument. There is definitely one. But there's also a very strong Fifth Amendment argument. Right. So we have the non-delegation doctrine where, Congress cannot delegate their authority. So that's what I mentioned with the EPA case, but also with the Fifth Amendment due process. So Jason Fick was deprived of his liberty and property without due process of law. Like it's crazy. Like he went to the Supreme Court. They chose not to hear it. He's been trying to get a judge to hear on it, and they keep on shutting him down. And it's like, okay, I've never had my day in court. Right. So think about all the millions of Americans who were censored or shut down on YouTube right before 2020. Like October of 2020, right before the election. And there's no due process of law, because can I sue Facebook? Can I sue Google, YouTube? No, I can't.
Hey, are we going to be taken down by some of your friends, moderators for doing this? Are you off limits on Facebook?
Are you on Rumble? Oh,
we're on Rumble. We're on.
We're you'll probably get suppressed on YouTube. I'm surprised that Steven Crowder's, he's still on YouTube, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
What did you think about that situation between him and Daily Wire? Because I was on his side. Because I think it was like his point to me was like, look, you're self-censoring. They were self-censoring, and they were telling him if you get booted off, then we don't have to pay you. And he's like, I'm not censoring myself. That's
well, the funny thing is, like Ben Shapiro, and they're like, yeah, let's make movies for conservatives. Boom, boom. Yeah, let's make movies. Yeah. And like I sent them a copy of my book. And I'm like, hey, let's make a movie about it. And like some like nameless clerk for his company like sent me a letter back, like super like the legalese, like basically, hey, we didn't have time to read your book. Go eat shit. So yeah. And so I'm kind of like that whole drama was crazy. And I'm not a fan of Candace Owens. She's just like that whole drama.
I'm not a fan of Daily Wire. I think they're kind of.
They have a place maybe I mean, they get some good information out, but there's a really good argument for, hey, instead of self-censoring, if you invested all your, he talks about how it's so expensive, all the millions of dollars to, why don't you just invest in Rebel or your own video channel, video platform? Yeah.
That's why. So, I mean, but with like the new, libertarian, movement or the awakened or whatever you want to call it, I think that a lot of them are skeptical of the Daily Wire for those reasons, because they become like the Fox News Light or whatever you want to call it, because they will censor themselves, and and Shapiro kind of sucks, I think. But.
So let's pivot to Project Veritas, and then
sure,
the movie, the documentary. So when you first were coming out, right? Explain a little bit about how the interaction with Veritas or whatever you can share with us, right? And how that was, and maybe some of your feelings or concerns, right? Coming out against Facebook, which is such a big organization that had to be scary and take a lot of courage on your part to do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I started that whole insider program. So previous to that, Facebook or Project Veritas had mainly just done like not insiders, but just, hey, let's find an employee and go to dinner with them and film them saying things that are crazy, damning. And so with me, I think I was one of the first people, the insiders, where they actually, contacted. I contacted them and reached out to them, and they sent me a camera. I started filming. So I worked closely with their journalists, and I was filming for a good like 3 or 4 month period of filming on a daily basis.
Nerve-wracking, huh? Like walking into work with
super nerve-wracking, like super. And dude, we had at one point, so because somebody actually doxed our address, and we would censor like terrorist content. So like we had Pinkerton like armed guards at one point. So I'm walking by Pinkerton armed guards with a camera strapped to my ankle, or a battery strapped to my ankle. So like, it's the funny thing is I was using my ankle holster. I had my gun ankle holster, and that's where I'd put the battery for the camera.
Wow.
So I had to wear like loose. Well, I had pretty comfortable clothing, but I had to modify my shirts.
Once you came out in Veritas, right? Were there any threats from Facebook or? Anything to say, hey, you should.
No, like that's good. What's crazy. I expected there to be more backlash, and like it was a pretty big story, like pretty national. It was big, and there was no comment from them. I think the PR strategy there was like, any mention of it just makes the story bigger, but no legal action from them, no like notice at all from the attorneys or from Cognizant. Cognizant didn't contact me at all. Reach out to me,
and they kind of dropped Facebook after that, right? Shortly after that,
they had already dropped Facebook, they ended their 3-year contract like 8 months prematurely. So yeah, they ended it in February of 2020. So yeah, I mean, Facebook's to blame. It's Cognizant. They took this contract. It's not something they normally do. So.
Yeah, do they use contractors now? Do you know what they're like? Are they using independent ones, or are they doing? Or is it all AI?
I think there's still a lot of companies. So there's one I think called Accenture that was a contract.
Oh yeah. What's the name of that company again? Accenture. I heard that.
Accenture.
Accenture's moderating.
We should double check that.
Accenture. So after.
So you still think they have content moderators?
They have
Yeah,
to
they
with the
definitely have to- you have to have
AIs.
some,
You gotta
yeah.
moderate that.
Yeah.
So another thing
Well,
that
well-
we'd like to do in the future with you, right? Because I know,
Yeah.
from talking with you, you have your little network of other Veritas whistleblowers, right? You guys became buddies, right?
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
like to maybe sometime in the future have a couple of the guys you like that have cool stories. We'll have all you on at once, talking about some of your stories that you had from some of the different whistleblowers. If that's something you could coordinate, I think that'd be fun. People like to hear that.
Okay, you're
Yeah, no, we'd love to. We could do like a round table, yeah.
you're buddies with Voorhees, right? And that
Yeah,
was the
Zach
Google
Voorhees, Jody O'Malley, the
So
RN. nurse
who
guys-
are those? Tell us who those are so people know.
Yeah, a couple of your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Zach Voorhees, so he went public a year before me, like in
Mhm.
2019.
I remember him.
And he was a software engineer for Google, and
Yep.
he was making good money, but he exposed like how they were just engineering their AI to like
Yeah.
manipulate viewpoints
With the search,
Um,
right? With the search.
with the search algorithms.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And he
that-
released more than I think it was 1,000 pages, 950 pages to the DOJ. And so that was pretty incredible. And then Jody O'Malley was the nurse whistleblower for Health and Human Services and
Oh yeah.
the COVID thing.
Yeah. I saw that
It was
video.
her. Tara Rodas exposed the HHS, like human trafficking, where the government's trafficking humans. Aaron Stevenson. So the crazy thing you need to know, I'll just mention this real quick, and we're good on time. So what's that big underground rescue? That big group that does
Ballard,
Tim
that Sound of
Ballard, yeah.
Freedom? Yeah.
So his whole testimony a couple weeks ago was like, yeah, we need more funding to like increase the program. Like we need to bring more kids through. And Aaron Stevenson, who worked for DHS, was like, no, we need to shut down the program entirely. The government shouldn't be bringing any kids across because they just get trafficked. The government is involved in trafficking these kids.
So Tara Rodas, who you mentioned, that was recent, right? Where she testified to Congress and she had a video where she went around. She's like, these kids are going to like these apartments, and then those people are not their parents. There's just a bunch of kids in an apartment with some random dude. And she's like, she basically had said that she saw human trafficking in action, right? Is that essentially?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was earlier this year.
Unreal.
She testified, and that's pretty incredible. Yeah. Incredible story.
So next thing, tell us about Police State.
Yeah.
I know you're going to be in Vegas tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I'm so
Yep.
bummed I can't be your date, man. So tell us a little bit about the film, your interactions with Dinesh or Bongino. You're going to Mar-a-Lago. So tell us a little bit about some of the cool stuff and some things about the film.
Yeah. So Police State is a documentary from Dinesh D'Souza and Don Bongino, just exposing how all these government apparatuses are working against American citizens. And, a lot of it talks about how started with the Patriot Act, and now those same tools are being weaponized against American citizens. So, I was just interviewed in the documentary along with Zach Voorhees. It was a great experience. I met Dinesh back in May. What's crazy is he actually he texts me I text him all the time. He responds which is really cool. I thought he'd be passing it off to someone below him, but no, direct contact with him, which is pretty nice. Super nice guy. And we so flew to Houston in May for the interview, and I watching it last night for the first time because I did my little segment, and but they covered January 6th, they covered the FBI, the parent teacher conferences, all the opposition.
Oh, you got to
to COVID.
connect me with him with my stuff.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
We'll try to get you I'll get you an interview with him.
Yeah.
That'll be great. Yeah.
I've seen a couple of his documentaries. They're good.
Oh yeah, I heard good things about it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. I'm excited to see my buddy in there too.
Yeah, so tomorrow's the virtual premiere, so you can buy tickets online for $20 and watch it in live. It'll be a live Q&A with it'll be on Rumble. Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so now you're going to Mar-a-Lago too, right? In a week.
Yeah. So next week is the red carpet premiere in Mar-a-Lago.
That's cool.
And so it's my first time being there. Maybe I don't know if Trump's going to be there, but that'd be cool if I could meet him.
Probably gonna be in court.
Yeah. Right. But no, it's super exciting just to be featured in that, and it was a fun. It's funny when you do an interview like that. I was so nervous, And then I watched the premiere last night with my brother. I'm like, oh wow, I sounded pretty good. But the day before, I was like sleep deprived. And I was drinking fluids because I went to Houston. The humidity was killing me,
Yeah.
and I worked out in the morning and worked out at night. And I felt like I was stuttering the entire time, but actually, I don't know if it's movie magic, but it turned out pretty well.
No, that's good. I can't wait to see it. So, December, are you going to be at America Fest with me again so we could hang out and go bug all the media row together?
Yeah, I'll be there in December. It'll be in Phoenix. Turning Point USA has that Freedom Fest.
Yeah.
So that'll be great.
Yeah.
I just would ask one more question. Since you were in the belly of the beast, if you could just describe to Americans how dangerous the social media companies are in terms of trying to engineer society and what that means for, our republic. Like, could you do it in, a few sentences? What is the danger there from your insider's perspective?
I mean, it's essentially the end of humanity. I mean, it's like the Matrix. We're going to be slaves if we let them get away with this. Because, I mean, you think about, that's the essence of it.
Yeah.
What they can do. I mean, the drop of a hat, they can just, like, if they hadn't showed ads, if they put it like ads to tell people to go vote on one day, like, they can cause the Republicans or Democrats to win that election. So,
right.
We've never seen anything like this. I mean, you thought that like Hitler was a dictator. You thought that Stalin was a dictator. Like, imagine 9 times 9 billion.
Right.
And then, and then when people start dying and then people start disappearing, it'll be like, and then people are, and once people are at home watching Netflix, watching porn and playing their video games, there's no incentive to even get out of the house. And then we're slaves.
Right.
Yeah.
So I say this all the time. We're in a war right now, right? Most people don't realize we're in a war and we're losing this war badly. That's why, we have this show. That's why I fight all these scumbags. That's why I love having people like yourself out there, because if there wasn't people that have courage like what you did, that affects your career and everything, and you got a family, it takes a lot of courage to do what you're doing. So I'm glad to call you my friend, and look forward to hanging out with you in the future.
Yeah, it's great to
Terry.
meet you. And thank you for your bravery and coming out. And I think basically this is what we need to do to fight back, is talk about what's going on. So thanks a lot for coming on, and really appreciate your courage.
Yeah, I'll give you a holler later, buddy.
All right, sounds good. All right, have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks. So, hey, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed that. We have a little update that me and Mr. Producer Jason did yesterday, because there's so much news out there about Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell, right? She both ladies, both attorneys, pled guilty to lesser charges for the RICO case, right? So everyone's nervous. Oh, what does that mean?
But not the
Are
RICO.
they gonna? No. So
Right.
what does that mean for Donald Trump? What does that mean for Pastor Lee, our buddy that was out here a few weeks ago? So we had I don't know, it's like 10 minutes. So please stick around and hear what David Shostokis. Sorry, I can't fucking. I'm like,
Shostokis.
Yeah.
What is it? Say it again. Shostokis. So David's going to tell us. He's going to tell us why these attorneys pled guilty. I asked him something to be worried about. He said no. He goes, it's not even a slap on the wrist. So I want to hear in David's own terms what happened. And before we do that, I want to read this quick. I don't know if we have this here. We had a couple friends here before we were filming. So Saturday, Reformation Awakening Media. I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize. Saturday, October 28th, Southbridge Church, 155th and 73rd Avenue in Orland Park at 10 to 1. It's free administration. It's an inspirational message by Mary Crawley. She's a prayer, a pastor. She was here. She's there you go. Awesome lady. I just met her tonight for the first time. And if any of you guys are in the Orland Park area, please look up Mary Crawley. Vicki Finnegan was here, her friend. I'm trying to look. Is there a website? Oh, you got it up there. There's not a website on here, is there? QR code on it. I just don't know
Oh, QR code. There you go.
This is pretty. This is why we're not.
Yeah. So we're high tech here. So Jason, you wanna throw up David?
Reformation Awakening Meeting.
Yeah.
Reformation Awakening Meeting. Orland Park, Illinois.
All right. So, hey, David, thank you very much for jumping on for a quick update on what's going on with Pastor Lee and all the crazy stuff that's going on in Atlanta, Georgia. And I think a lot of our viewers and probably the rest of the folks in the country, especially who are big supporters from our side, very concerned and want to understand, what or why would Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis plead guilty for these charges, and what does that mean to Pastor Lee and some of the other defendants? And the best you could explain it to laymen, that'd be great, because there's a lot of concerns.
No, there's all kinds of concerns. As we were saying before we got on the air, just a bit of background for folks that to catch up. There is the ongoing RICO case in Atlanta, Georgia, in Fulton County, Georgia, where Donald Trump and 18 other people were indicted for what they call a RICO violation, RICO being Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organizations Act. And it's while the charges are serious, the actual acts that they say are criminal are kind of very, very strange here. And among the 18 people is also my client, Pastor Stephen Lee, who is not, as I've often said, and he's been on the show with you, is not a criminal, but he's an American hero, even though people don't even know about it. And those are the best kind of heroes that are kind of quiet and they just do what they're supposed to do and they don't seek glory. And that's what Pastor Lee has been. And so, but he's been indicted along with President Trump. I've gotten a lot of calls from a lot of media people in the last few days regarding the kind of Cheesebro plea and the Sidney Powell plea and now the Jenna Ellis plea. And people are saying, does that have any impact on Pastor Lee and President Trump and some of the other folks? I can't answer that question up front. And the question up front is the way they've structured this indictment to say that there's a criminal enterprise. There's like 5 or 6 different kinds of different enterprises, if you will. There's a strain where folks were involved in what they call the fake electors. We would say that they were alternate electors, people that were appointed in the case that the election was in fact changed, and then they would go and vote for President Trump in the Electoral College, as opposed to the group that's dedicated to Joe Biden. And then there's a group that Pastor Lee's involved in, where they say that Pastor Lee and 2 other people are trying to get this woman who is kind of infamous for pulling ballots out from underneath the table, Ruby Freeman, and then running ballots there on videotape after they kicked everybody out. And they're saying that Pastor Lee and 2 other people were trying to get her to illegally change her testimony and do some illegal acts. So those are 2 of them. Then there's another one that involves Mayor Giuliani relative to trying to get the state legislatures to illegally change their electoral votes. Then there's the general one involving President Trump. So there's about 4 things going on where they tried to bring it together. And the folks that pled guilty to a group of activities that involved another county, didn't even involve Atlanta or Fulton County, involved a county called Coffee. And in Coffee County, a group of folks went to examine the voting machines and tried to do a forensic audit on the voting machines. And somehow or other, the woman in Fannie Willis has determined that doing a forensic examination of voting machines is tampering with election equipment illegally. And that was the thing that was involving Mr. Cheesebro, the bail bondsman that pled guilty, and involving Sidney Powell. And Sidney, strangely enough, all those other things, they got rid of all the felony charges when these people pled guilty. And then they pled guilty to these series of misdemeanors, and the misdemeanors that they pled guilty to are classified in such a way so that under Georgia law, if they comply with the terms of their probation and stay out of trouble during the probation period, they can actually get erased and have their record clean. But the people that pled guilty to things that don't involve President Trump. They pled guilty to things that don't involve Pastor Lee. So there's no implication on these. But the worst part about all that is Sidney Powell is just over the last 30, 40 years, she's one of the premier appellate attorneys in the United States of America. She's made a tremendous amount of law. And as I've told any number of other media, it's just a shame that now, because all we have is our legacy, right? And now Sidney Powell's obituary is going to read, pled guilty to crimes related to Donald Trump. And it's just a horrible shame, the miscarriage of justice. It's a terrible situation where they can overcharge a case and charge a terrible, terrible crime that somebody has to defend themselves and perhaps go into bankruptcy to defend themselves. And then roll it over and use it as extortion to get a plea on a minor misdemeanor, so that the prosecution has a scalp on the wall.
So this is basically at the federal level and the state level, weaponizing the government to go after people like Pastor Lee, myself, other folks, right? To weaponize the government, to harass them, to intimidate them. And so if Sidney and Jenna continue to go forward with this fight, it'll cost them a fortune, right? It would cost them a fortune. They would have to spend against unlimited funds that are paid by the taxpayers to weaponize our government to go after political foes. Therefore, it's easier and cheaper and less stressful to plead at something that's really a slap on the hand, the wrist.
It's not even a slap on the hand, because ultimately the record's going to be wiped clean, and from a record standpoint, it's going to be like it didn't happen. But for the time being, they can run around saying we got a conviction, and that allows them to say that, oh, look at all these criminals that are surrounding Donald Trump. It's all about marketing. It's all about the marketing against President Trump, and so it's a horrible situation. Where in fact they've utilized the prosecutorial authority to extort a guilty plea on a minor charge. Yeah. And if you're Sidney Powell and you've been an attorney for 30, 40 years, you've done your time, you've done your work, you're a grandmother, you want to spend time with your grandchildren, you want to get up in the morning and not having this stuff hanging over your head, and you don't want to go bankrupt in the meantime. It's pretty attractive. It's pretty attractive to have that situation presented to you.
What about I thought I read some stories today that said that Jenna is agreeing to cooperate. I mean, is that just typical left-wing media?
That would be the language that would be in the she's agreeing to tell the truth. Okay, is that cooperation? I'm going to assume that what truth she has doesn't really indicate there's any other crimes, So what she's agreed to do is to tell the truth. And oh goodness gracious, isn't that what you're supposed to do anyway?
Yeah. So Dave, if these very nice prosecutors, right, if they had a solid case against Sidney and Jenna, did they agree to take a lesser plea deal because of the goodness of their hearts, because they could have really prosecuted them?
No, they took a lesser plea from Jenna and Sidney and Mr. Cheesebro because they couldn't prove the crimes that they were charged with. That's what it tells you. Is when
obviously I was being sarcastic, right? Obviously, but we all know that these people are just.
Well, let's go with evil.
Yeah. I was trying to think of something without getting us, they're evil. And if they felt they had a chance there's no way they would allow them to plea
Yeah,
out.
no,
They'd
if
want to
there's
hang them.
anybody if there's anybody in this bunch that that's involved in any of these activities that should have their law license pulled for unethical practices, I would
Yeah.
suggest that it would be these prosecutors. I was a prosecutor, right? And I was very careful. I would charge the highest crime that I could prove beyond a reasonable doubt, right? You see prosecutors have a 95% conviction rate. They should, right? Because they shouldn't charge things they can't prove.
Mhm.
And so when you overcharge a case and you charge a case that you cannot prove, you have done something unethical. And I would suggest that that's something that somebody should yank your law license for. And it's a horrible circumstance. We I've been people are asking about Pastor Lee and the possibility of some sort of plea on his behalf. I've had a couple of answers. One of which, of course, is we do have a meeting scheduled soon, and we're going to hear. We have an obligation, an ethical obligation, to hear what they have to say. But Pastor Lee's case, there's some videotape in Pastor Lee's case of some body cam of a police officer talking to him while he's sitting in his car. And I've said to people, I said, well, you know what? If he's parked on the wrong side of the street and he doesn't have his seatbelt on, and they want to give him a parking ticket and a seatbelt violation and dismiss the rest, yeah, we'll do that. You know, we'll do that because that's something they can prove. But beyond that, Pastor Lee has made every indication that he has no intention of entering any kind of plea deal that indicates that he's guilty of any kind of criminal activity. And
yeah, so I guess the key takeaways for the layman here is that because they agreed to these plea deals doesn't necessarily mean that there's this big vast RICO conspiracy across the whole spectrum of all the different co-defendants of Donald Trump, nor does it mean that everybody else is at risk of cooperation by Jenna and Sydney, that they're gonna, like, everyone's gonna come tumbling down from this big cooperation amongst the two co-defendants that pled guilty, correct?
absolutely. Well, as far as the pastor and probably about 8 or 10 other defendants, they've never met Sidney Powell or Jenna Ellis. They've never had any interaction with these people. So they have no information on any of the other people to give, you know, related to anything else. So it's no, it is not implication. It's an implication that the government has tremendous power and authority to extort guilty pleas from essentially innocent people.
Yeah, another reminder for the audience too is that Pastor Lee has never met or spoken to Donald Trump, which is really important for everybody to know. How's the fundraising going for the pastor? And I think there's an event you have coming up as well.
Yeah, November 9th in Shanahan, we are having a major event that involves David Smith from the Illinois Family Institute and Randy Bland from the Families of Faith Ministries and Latasha Fields from the Illinois Opportunity Projects, all three of whom are ordained ministers. And they're going to be speaking to the weaponization of government against religion on that particular aspect of the panel. Then there's going to be a time period in between with Pastor Lee actually explaining his experiences and his life experience and what that, in some respects, I would suggest it explains how he wound up in Georgia, because anytime he's got this long history of anytime there's some sort of chaotic situation or crisis in America, he's there to assist and help. So people are gonna have an opportunity to hear from Pastor Lee himself, and then following that, myself and Dave Oles, who is our counsel in Georgia, my co-counsel in Georgia, is coming to town, and we're going to sit and explain to everybody in detail what a farce this is, and what, from a legal perspective, but more than that, even though it's a farce, what a danger it is to the First Amendment rights of all people in America. Since this happened, Terry, I've done interviews with reporters from Paris and reporters from London and Hamburg, Germany, and in Australia and in New Zealand. And you know what? The folks overseas get it more than Americans get it, because they've historically, for their own protection, looked to America for how America protects the rights of its citizens. And if the rights of American citizens get decimated, they will no longer have someplace beyond their borders to look to explain that this is how the human condition should be. You have no idea what the overseas, number one, interest, but number two, understanding of the import of defending this case means not just to the defendants, but to Americans generally, and then in many respects to the world. So yeah, we're going to be talking about all that on November 9th at Family of Faith Ministries in Shanahan, and we're excited about that. And if everything goes well, from what I understand, Behind Enemy Lines is planning to do a live stream from there.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And then we'll put the flyer up here. So for anyone that's watching the show, where can they donate to Pastor Lee? If you don't mind.
Give Send Go, Chaplain Lee, givesendgo.com/Chaplain Lee. You can donate to that. There's two pots of donations, one by the Illinois Family Institute, one at the Give Send Go. But it's very, very important, because Pastor Lee's fight is not just his fight, it's your fight as well.
Yeah, it is. It sure is. Well, thank you for that update, and hopefully you're going to ease some minds, because you see how the news is. So we really appreciate your input in this matter.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on in this edition of Behind Enemy Lines. God bless you, and I hope I hope this podcast continues to have the success that it's having.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
All right. Thanks, sir.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
I don't hear it. There we go. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I hope it eased a lot of minds, because there's a lot of uncertainty why these people are starting to plead guilty. Basically, it means little to nothing to Trump, to Pastor Lee. It's these radical scumbags weaponizing the judicial system just to get these people to suck them dry on finances to pay for legal fees and get them to say they pled guilty. So they're all,
Sounds like the mob.
Closing statements are going to come from Paul. Next week's Halloween, so we're going to probably dress up as
Blue
I
hairs.
don't know, yeah, liberals, LGBTQ or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
Based liberals. Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot. I want to thank Ryan Hartwick for coming on the show. We do this kind of show so that we can show people what's actually going on out there and how people are getting censored. Our free speech is under attack. Our country's under attack. Like Terry said, we're at war. Here's that book again. Where am I at? Behind the Mask of Facebook. You should pick it up because it goes into detail about how social media was and, in Facebook's case, is censoring people. And I think that's control that, should not be relegated to a private company or the government because it violates our constitutional rights. So again, we're going to continue to have people like this on our show. We're going to continue to talk about how we're being censored ourselves here in our own Republican organization, in our community in Illinois, and how we need to, we need to fight back. We need to take back the Republican Party because they're not using it. So next week, we're going to have some extra special surprise for you. Terry and I might be dressed up with blue hair and masks for Halloween to make fun of the liberals. But join us. Hit that like, subscribe on YouTube, on Rumble. Check us out on Twitter, on Facebook, and share it with your friends. And come back next week for that surprise. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Every time we pull up, you see stars, you see stripes, you see flags on the cars and the trucks and the bikes. Every time we pull up, we go hard, we outside, we got flags on our arms that are tatted there for life. Every time we pull up, we don't care if you mad, we cherish this land, the haters can get buried in rags. Stay set fire to old glory, turning fabric to ash. But every time we pull up, all you're gonna